All right, hey everyone, welcome. You know, you see these movies, right? The Great Escape, Shawshank Redemption, all these super serious, intense, dramatic prison breaks. They make it look so cool, so clever, so impossible. But what if I told you that for every brilliant escape artist, there are like a dozen guys whose plans were less mastermind and more, what were you thinking? I'm talking about plans so ridiculous, so poorly thought out, you can't help but laugh. We're not talking about hardened criminals pulling off the impossible. We're talking about hilarious fails that probably got them an extra few years just for the sheer comedy of it all. Tonight, we're diving into the deep end of ridiculousness. We've got stories that sound like they were written for a sitcom. From guys trying to mail themselves to freedom to disguises that wouldn't fool a toddler, these are the escape attempts that went spectacularly, hilariously wrong. My name is Albert, and welcome to Unknown Facts. So get comfortable, maybe grab a snack, but don't try to hide a file in it. You'll see why later. This is going to be good. And hey, if you like stories that make you say no way, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button down below. Give this video a like too. It really helps us out. Let's get into it. Okay, let's kick things off with a classic case of overestimating your own flexibility. Picture this, a prison in Mexico. An inmate, let's call him Juan, has a brilliant, or so he thinks, escape plan. His girlfriend is coming for a conjugal visit. The plan? She'll bring in a big, empty suitcase and he'll just fold himself up and she'll wheel him out. Simple, right? What could possibly go wrong? I mean, besides everything. So the visit happens. Juan, who is not a small guy by any means, manages to contort himself into the fetal position and cram his entire body inside this suitcase. I'm getting claustrophobic just thinking about it. His girlfriend zips it up, and now comes the hard part, acting casual. She grabs the handle and starts to wheel this very, very heavy suitcase towards the exit. She's trying to look cool, like she's just heading off on a weekend trip, not smuggling a full-grown man out of a maximum security facility. The guards see her struggling. The suitcase is wobbling, she's sweating, and it looks like she's trying to pull a small car. One of the guards is like, "Ma'am, that looks heavy. What do you have in there?" She probably stammers something like, "Oh, you know, books. Lots and lots of heavy books. For my book club." The guards are not buying it. They decide to take a closer look. They lift the suitcase onto a table, and it's just dead weight. Thump. They ask her to open it. She refuses. So they get the key, or maybe just cut it open and unzip it. And there he is, folded up like human origami, blinking in the bright lights of the guard station. Alright, so if a suitcase is too small time for you, how about a helicopter? This next story is straight out of a bad action movie. We're in France, and a couple of inmates decide they're going to go big or go home. Or, you know, go big and end up right back in their cells. Their plan involved a helicopter. Not just any helicopter, but one they were going to hijack. Ambitious, I'll give them that. Their accomplice on the outside, a woman who apparently had taken a single 1-hour flying lesson, was tasked with the easy part, hijacking a helicopter and its pilot. She somehow succeeds, forcing the pilot at gunpoint to fly to the prison. So far, so terrifyingly successful, I guess? The helicopter arrives over the prison yard, hovering like a giant, noisy buzzard. The inmates are waiting, ready for their grand exit. They throw down a rope ladder. The first inmate starts climbing. It's dramatic. It's cinematic. The wind is whipping. The other prisoners are cheering. He's almost there. And this is where the 1-hour flying lesson part becomes really, really important. The accomplice, our amateur pilot, can't keep the helicopter stable. It's bobbing and weaving like a drunk bee. The inmate is clinging on for dear life, swinging around like a pendulum. He's shouting instructions. The pilot is probably screaming. The accomplice is definitely screaming. It's just chaos. The prison guards, who were initially stunned, are now just watching this comedy of errors unfold in the sky above them. They probably had their popcorn out. The helicopter is lurching so badly that the inmate can't get in. He's just dangling there, a human windsock of failure. Eventually, the pilot, probably fearing for his life and the integrity of his helicopter, gives up. Or maybe they ran out of gas. Either way, they can't get the guy in. They have to land the helicopter right back in the prison yard. Now let's move on to an escape plan that is the absolute cliché of prison breaks, the bedsheet rope. We've all seen it in cartoons and old movies. You tie a bunch of sheets together, throw it out the window, and gracefully rappel down the side of the building to freedom. It's a timeless classic, except when it's not. And for this inmate, it was definitely not. This guy, let's call him Barry, was in a cell a few stories up. He spent weeks, maybe months, collecting extra bed sheets. Maybe he was trading his dessert for them, who knows? He meticulously tied them together, testing the knots, making sure his rope was strong and secure. He had it all planned out. He waited for the dead of night, when the guards were making their rounds elsewhere. The coast was clear. He tied one end of his makeshift rope to the leg of his heavy metal bed. Solid. He tossed the other end out the window. It unspooled beautifully, reaching almost to the ground. Perfect. He took a deep breath, channeled his inner secret agent, and started his descent. For the first few feet, it was going great. He was feeling pretty good about himself. He was probably thinking, I'm a genius. This is actually working. And then, rip. Not the knots. The knots were fine. The actual fabric of the bed sheets, which, let's be honest, are not exactly climbing-grade material, gave way. One of the sheets just tore right in half. Barry went from a graceful descent to a very ungraceful, very fast drop. Luckily for him, he wasn't that high up yet, so he landed in a bush. Unluckily for him, the bush was right next to the patrol path. A guard, probably sipping his coffee, heard a loud "Ripe!" followed by a scream and a crash. He walked over to the bush, shined his flashlight, and there was Barry, tangled in a mess of torn linen, covered in leaves and scratches, looking up with the most defeated expression you've ever seen. Okay, this next one is a personal favorite. It combines laziness, desperation, and a complete misunderstanding of how the Postal Service works. This inmate didn't want to dig a tunnel or climb a wall. No, his plan was much simpler. He was going to mail himself to freedom. You heard me right. He decided to become a package. Priority. Mail freedom. The plan was hatched in the prison's workshop, where they made furniture and other items that were shipped out. He found a large cardboard box, one big enough to fit a human, if that human was willing to get very, very cozy. He packed himself some water and a snack because, shipping can take a few days. He then convinced a fellow inmate to tape him up inside the box and slap a shipping label on it. So there he is, crouched in a dark box, waiting to be loaded onto a truck and delivered to a non-prison address. His accomplice wheeled the box out with all the other shipments ready for pickup, and for a moment, it looked like it might actually work. The box was loaded onto a pallet with all the other, non-human cargo. The delivery truck was backing up. He was so close. But here's the thing about being in a sealed cardboard box. It gets hot and stuffy, and you can't see anything. Our guy started to get a little antsy, a little claustrophobic, and maybe a little wiggly. A guard was doing a final check of the outgoing shipment when he noticed something odd. One of the boxes on the pallet was shaking, just a little bit. He probably thought it was a rat. He walked over and stared at the box. It stopped moving. He poked it. Nothing. He was about to walk away, but then the box sneezed. A tiny muffled "achoo" came from inside the cardboard. The guard froze. He leaned in close and listened. He heard breathing. At that point, the gig was up. They sliced open the box with a box cutter, and there he was, our wannabe parcel, looking very sheepish. Instead of getting a delivery confirmation, he got a confirmation of more prison time. Return to sender. Ah, the classic disguise. A fake mustache, a wig, a trench coat. It's a staple of espionage, and apparently ill-conceived escape plans. This next story involves an inmate who decided his ticket to freedom was to walk right out the front door, disguised as a woman. He put a lot of effort into this one. You have to give him credit for the arts and crafts aspect of it. He managed to get his hands on a wig, some makeup, a dress, and even a pair of high heels. I don't even want to know how. He spent hours in his cell, practicing his walk, applying lipstick, and trying to figure out how to look natural in a floral print dress. He was going for unassuming female visitor, but the final result was probably more linebacker in a wig. The day of the escape arrives. He's all dolled up, he's got his purse, he's got his heels on, and he's ready to sashay his way to freedom. He times it perfectly, blending in with a group of actual female visitors who are leaving the prison. He's walking with the group, trying to keep his head down, taking small, delicate steps in his heels. He's almost at the final checkpoint. The guard at the gate is just doing a routine check, nodding at the visitors as they leave. Our guy is almost past him. He's tasting freedom. And then the guard says, "Have a nice day, ma'am." It's a simple pleasantry. All our guy had to do was give a little nod, a little wave, or say nothing at all. The guard just raised an eyebrow. The jig was up. His cover was blown, not by his walk, not by his makeup, but by his voice. He was promptly escorted back to his cell, probably having to walk all the way back in those heels. If mailing yourself in a box seems too complicated, how about hiding in the laundry? It's warm, it's soft, it's also a terrible idea. This next escape artist thought he had found the perfect hiding spot, a giant rolling cart full of dirty laundry destined for the prison's off-site cleaning facility. His plan was to burrow down into the pile of unwashed uniforms and wait. So, during laundry collection day, he saw his chance. When the guards weren't looking, he dove headfirst into one of the large canvas baskets. He wiggled his way down, burying himself under a mountain of sweaty shirts and smelly socks. It must have been awful in there, hot, damp, and smelling like, well, a prison laundry basket. But freedom has a price, and apparently that price is smelling terrible for a few hours. The plan was actually progressing pretty well. The laundry carts were collected and wheeled towards the loading dock. He was on the move. He could hear the rumble of the wheels, the chatter of the guards. He was just trying to control his breathing, stay quiet, and not think about the questionable stains on the clothes surrounding him. He was minutes away from being loaded onto a truck. But then disaster struck. It wasn't a suspicious guard or a lumpy-looking laundry pile. It was his own body that betrayed him. Maybe it was the dust. Maybe it was the lint. Maybe it was the sheer concentrated funk of hundreds of unwashed garments. His nose started to twitch. He tried to fight it. He held his breath. He pinched his nose, but it was no use. The sneeze was coming. He let out a massive, echoing "Achoo!" that seemed to shake the entire laundry cart. The pile of clothes visibly jumped. The guards who were loading the truck stopped dead in their tracks. They looked at each other, confused. Did that laundry basket just sneeze? One of them cautiously approached the cart, poked the pile of clothes with his baton, and out popped our hero, covered in lint and shame. Bless you, and bless your extra 5 years in prison. This next one is for all the aspiring artists out there. It's a tale of creativity, patience, and really, really bad timing. So an inmate decided he was going to dig his way out of his cell. A classic, right? But he needed a way to hide the hole he was making in the wall. So, he came up with what he thought was a genius idea. He would paint a fake wall to cover the hole. He got his hands on a piece of cardboard, cut it to the exact size of the hole he was digging. Then, using paints he managed to procure from the art program, he painstakingly painted the cardboard to look exactly like the surrounding concrete wall. He was a regular Michelangelo of concrete texture. He got the color right, the little cracks, the texture. It was a masterpiece of deception. Every night, he'd remove his fake wall, dig a little deeper into the real wall, and then carefully place his painting back over the hole before the guards came by for their morning inspection. This went on for weeks. The tunnel was getting deeper. His painting was holding up. He was so proud of his work. He was an artist, and his art was going to set him free. The final night arrived. The tunnel was complete. It led to a maintenance corridor. Freedom was just a few feet away. He planned to make his escape after the last nightly check, but he made one crucial mistake. In his excitement, he decided to do a little touch-up on his cardboard masterpiece just to make sure it was perfect for its final performance. He added a little more gray paint to blend it in seamlessly. What he didn't account for was drying time. A few minutes later, a guard came by for an unscheduled early inspection. The guard walked past the cell, glanced in, and did a double-take. He walked back and looked closer. There, on the wall, was a perfectly square patch of concrete that was glistening. It was wet. He reached out and touched it, and came away with a finger covered in wet gray paint. He peeled back the cardboard and, well, you know the rest, busted by a rookie painting mistake. Speaking of tunnels, let's talk about a group effort, because sometimes one person's bad idea is even better when you get a whole team involved. A group of inmates decided they were going to pull off the ultimate escape. They were going to dig a tunnel, not just any tunnel, but a long, sophisticated tunnel that would take them under the prison walls and out to freedom. This was a major operation. They worked in shifts, using stolen spoons, scraps of metal, anything they could find to dig. They had a system for disposing of the dirt, hiding it in their pants and shaking it out in the yard. They had lookouts. They had a whole engineering team, if you can call it that. This went on for months. It was their whole life. Digging, digging, digging. They were meticulous with their planning. They had maps. They had calculations. They figured they needed to dig about 100 feet to clear the outer wall and surface in a nearby forest. They were so careful, so quiet. The guards had no idea. The day finally came when their calculations told them they had reached their destination. They were right under the forest. It was time to go up. The lead digger started carefully pushing upwards. The dirt was soft. He broke through the surface, poking his head out, ready to breathe the sweet air of freedom. He looked around, expecting to see trees and moonlight. Instead, he saw carpet and a desk and a lamp. He was confused. He pushed himself up further and realized he was in an office, a very familiar office. He looked up and saw a nameplate on the desk. It read, "The Warden." They had miscalculated, horribly. Instead of digging their way to a forest, their months of hard work, their grand epic tunnel, had surfaced directly in the middle of the warden's office. The warden, who was working late, just looked up from his paperwork, saw a head popping out of his floor, and probably just put his face in his hands. It's the definition of an epic fail. You know that classic trick from the cartoons where a character leaves a dummy in their bed to fool someone? Well, one inmate decided to try that in real life. But he didn't have a mannequin or a bunch of pillows. He had soap. Lots and lots of soap. His plan was to carve a life-sized replica of his own head out of soap to fool the guards during their nightly head count. This guy was a true artist. He spent weeks collecting bars of soap. He carefully molded and carved them, creating a surprisingly realistic sculpture of his own sleeping face. He even used bits of his own hair to make it look more authentic. He placed this soap head on his pillow, draped a blanket over it, and from a distance, in the dim light of the prison corridor, it looked just like him, sleeping soundly. The plan was to use this decoy to buy him time. While the guards thought he was asleep in his bed, he would be squeezing through a loosened window frame and making a run for it. The night of the escape, he set up his soapy doppelganger, checked it one last time, it looked great, and started working on the window. Everything was going according to plan, but he forgot one crucial variable: the weather. It was an unusually hot and humid summer night. The prison cells had no air conditioning. As the hours ticked by, the cell got hotter and hotter. And what does soap do when it gets hot and humid? It melts. Slowly, his beautifully sculpted soap head began to lose its shape. The nose started to droop. The ears began to sag. The whole face started to look less like a sleeping person and more like a surrealist painting. When the guard came by for the 3 a.m. check, he shined his flashlight into the cell. Instead of seeing a sleeping inmate, he saw a horrifying, waxy, melted puddle on the pillow with some hair sticking out of it. He probably thought something terrible had happened. He rushed in, only to find the inmate stuck halfway out the window and his decoy slowly turning into a bubbly mess. The evidence of his plan had literally melted away. When you're trying to escape from a prison, blending in is key. Most people think that means blending in with other people. But, this next inmate had a different idea. His prison was located in a rural area, surrounded by fields and farms. And in those fields were sheep. You can see where this is going, can't you? He decided his best chance at escape was to disguise himself as a sheep. I am not making this up. He painstakingly crafted a sheep costume out of a mattress cover, using the fluffy stuffing for wool. It was probably incredibly hot and itchy, but he was committed to the role. He waited for a foggy day to make his move, thinking the poor visibility would help his disguise. He put on his sheep costume and managed to sneak out of the prison grounds and into a nearby field with a real flock of sheep. So there he is on all fours in a field surrounded by actual sheep wearing a mattress cover. He's trying to act natural. He's baaing. He's nibbling on some grass to really sell it. He thinks he's a genius. From a distance, the guards just see a flock of sheep. His plan is working. He's slowly making his way across the field, moving with the flock, heading towards the road and freedom. But a couple of guards notice something off. One of the sheep in the flock is a little bigger than the others, and a little dirtier, and it seems to be sweating profusely. They get their binoculars to take a closer look. They're scanning the flock and they focus on this one particular sheep. It's crawling on its hands and knees and appears to be eating grass. That's when they knew something was wrong. Even for a sheep, this one was acting weird. They drove a jeep out to the field. As they got closer, our inmate, still deep in character, just kept crawling and baaing, hoping they wouldn't notice him. The guards got out of the jeep, walked right up to him, and probably said something like, "All right, Larry, playtime's over." He was caught, not because his costume was bad, but because he took method acting way too far. Everyone loves getting a cake in prison. It's a little slice of normalcy, a taste of the outside world. For one prisoner, it was also supposed to be a taste of freedom. His family had a plan. They were going to bake him a big, beautiful birthday cake, and hidden deep inside would be the one thing every prisoner dreams of: a file, a metal file to saw through his cell bars. The cake arrived at the prison. It was a big, multi-layered chocolate cake with "Happy Birthday, Charlie" written on top in frosting. The guards, following procedure, inspected it. They poked it with skewers, looking for contraband. But the family was clever. They had baked the file deep into the center of the bottom layer where a simple poke wouldn't find it. The cake passed inspection and was delivered to the birthday boy. Charlie was ecstatic. His plan was in motion. He took the cake back to his cell, his heart pounding with excitement. Freedom was just a few slices of chocolate away. He just had to wait for lockdown, then he could carefully dissect the cake, retrieve his tool, and get to work on those bars. But there was a problem. The cake smelled amazing. And Charlie hadn't had good chocolate cake in a very, very long time. He thought to himself, well, I'll just have one small piece, from the corner, away from where the file is. So he cut a small slice and ate it. It was heavenly. Then he thought, just one more small piece. One piece turned into two. Two turned into four. He was just going to eat around the middle part, he told himself, but his self-control, weakened by years of prison food, completely evaporated. Before he knew it, he was just shoveling cake into his mouth. He ate the whole thing, the entire giant file-filled cake. It was only after he was lying on his bunk, groaning with a massive stomachache, that he remembered why the cake was sent in the first place. He never even found the file. He literally ate his escape plan. The guards probably found the file the next day in his toilet. Let's end with a story that is just pure bizarre genius, or maybe just bizarre. This inmate was a bit of an entertainer. His talent? Ventriloquism. And he had a dummy, a creepy-looking little guy named Patches. His escape plan was to use Patches to create a diversion. This is already sounding like a weird horror movie, right? The plan was this. During a time when the guards were changing shifts, creating a moment of confusion, he would prop Patches up in the window of his cell. He would then throw his voice, making it sound like Patches was yelling insults at the guards in the yard below. The idea was that the guards would be so distracted by the loudmouth dummy that he could slip out of his cell and escape through a pre-planned route. The day comes. He sets Patches up in the window, looking out over the yard. He takes a deep breath and starts his act. "Hey, you guards! Your hats are stupid!" he yells in Patches' squeaky voice. A few guards look up, confused. "Yeah, I'm talking to you. You couldn't catch a cold." He's really getting into it. The guards are now gathering below the window, shouting up at this weird dummy that's yelling at them. The diversion is working. It's actually working. The guards are completely focused on Patches. Our inmate sees his chance. He quietly slips out of his cell and starts sneaking down the corridor. He's moving fast. He's tasting freedom. He's a genius, a ventriloquist mastermind. But he made one critical error in his setup. He had just propped Patches on the windowsill. He didn't secure him. As he was making his escape, a gust of wind blew through the corridor. It hit his cell window, and poor Patches, in the middle of a particularly scathing insult, tipped forward and fell 3 stories down, landing on the pavement with a loud crack. His wooden head popped right off and rolled to a stop at the guard's feet. The guards stared at the decapitated dummy, then looked up at the now empty window, and then looked at each other. The distraction was over. They found our inmate hiding in a broom closet a few minutes later, a truly dummy-proof plan. And there you have it. 12 escape plans that were so bad, they were hilarious. From sheep costumes to melting soap heads and cakes that were just too good to resist. It just goes to show you that a good escape plan requires more than just guts. It requires a little bit of common sense, which all of these guys were clearly lacking. You have to wonder what the conversations were like with their cellmates the next day. So, how'd the sheep thing go, Larry? It's just incredible. These stories remind us that reality is often funnier and stranger than any fiction you could write. While we see these dramatic, brilliant escapes in movies, the real world is filled with laundry basket sneezes and tunnels that lead to the warden's office. It's a good thing these guys weren't successful, but you can't help but laugh at the sheer audacity and spectacular failure of their attempts. It's a perfect example of why some people are, and should probably remain, behind bars. Thank you so much for hanging out and watching. I hope you got a good laugh out of these unbelievable stories. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps us out. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to Unknown Facts and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into the weird and wonderful. We'll see you next time.